Thank you so much, Tupesa, for giving me this opportunity. Let me tell you that today is 12th of August and today is the webinar. But to be very honest, I have been excited for this webinar for over 2 weeks. And I have been working with Ravi sir for all the updates about the event and how to schedule and all the to and fro of the event. It is very rare that we get such a person on a podium of PMA which have experience in a lot of different domains. I would like to just cover some of them, and that will be just a few achievements of sir, so that you just know from which background Dr. Ravi sir is coming and what all we are going to learn today. So Dr. Ravi sir is currently the Vice President of Corporate Strategy and Marketing at Praj Industries. And when we name Praj Industries, it's also important to understand what Praj Industries actually do. Praj Industries is the leading industry biotechnology company, and it is one of the pioneer company in ethanol production in India. Dr. Ravindra Udkirkar hold a doctorate in management from Pune University. And why I mentioned this, because the thesis of his research was very, very interesting. His research thesis revolved around renewable energy and international marketing strategies. Dr. Ravindra Udkirkar have widely traveled around the world for formulating, implementing the go-to-market strategies and business strategies. Also, as an industry expert, he has addressed numerous professional forums at trade fairs and industry events worldwide. He has also worked in Singapore, UAE, and USA on deputation. Along with that, I would also like to tell that Dr. Udkirkar have a professional background of over 3 decades. And this experience revolved around the production of different various kind of projects and in both Indian and international markets. Apart from these achievements, he also have an established track record in sales and marketing, business development, and his forte, the strategy domain, with leading corporates in India and also in abroad. Dr. Udkirkar is passionate about education and has a long-standing association with various B schools in India and also abroad. He has actively participated as a member in several forums, such as CII and Indian American Chamber of Commerce. Dr. Ravindra Udkirkar have published several articles and papers and also case studies that have appeared in international and domestic journals. This was all about the professional achievements of sir. Now, one of the most important things I want to tell about sir, that in his leisure time, he loves gardening and reading management books and also spending time with his family. That was about Ravi sir.
I request Dr. Ravi sir to start his session.
Good evening to all of you. Pranav, thank you for this generous and long introductions. Gets a little bit embarrassing because I see a luminary of people who are very well achievers. I want to start off by thanking Mr. Bar Patil, Mr. Punde, Mr. Tupe, Anita ma'am, and also Biman. I see so many of friends here in the list, and I'm so delighted. My friend Sunil Godbole seems to have especially joined. So I'm delighted to have all of you here. Mr. Bokil, I see him there too. It's an honor to be able to engage with you on this very interesting topic. I think we are just about 10 minutes past 8, so I'll straight dive into the presentation. Is delivering superior customer experience, which is, I believe, is a winning business strategy. The way I have structured my presentation is we are just going to take a quick look at the microeconomic outlook that we have right now and also the business landscape. We are going to a little bit brush up on the customer experience concepts. Then we will talk about some of the challenges, why customer experience fails or it doesn't take off as much as it should. Then we are going to actually talk about what is the roadmap for implementation if one has to take this very seriously. We are going to look at some of the success stories, what they do, why they succeed, who are those companies. And then we are also going to talk about best practices. A lot of meat is stored in the bottom half of my presentation, so I will little bit try and skip some of the earlier sections, which I believe should be just a brush up or a context setting. So what we are seeing is the economy still is reeling, although the stock market has a different story to tell. The inflation and export growth parameters, manufacturing index, and there are many other parameters which still are a matter of great concern. So economic recovery year on year, definitely looking good, but still not quite as back at pre-COVID levels. Clearly, the focus is today on building public health system and infrastructure, which has caught us on the wrong foot, and naturally so that a lot of concentration is going on there. A lot of fiscal reforms, which are still, the businesses are coming to terms with, whether it is GST filing, whether the after effects of the demonetization. A lot of talk that is going on in newspapers. Need not talk much about it. Clearly, life versus livelihood is a tug of war that's going on everywhere. We don't know to what extent. We just had some not so good news coming from America and some of the Western world where the Delta variant is causing a havoc. So that continues to be a matter of concern. After effects of Brexit and some of the Middle East tensions are still not quite known, and they will pan out as the time goes by. Global terror and environmental concerns, a dark shadow. I mean, only earlier this week, the IPCC Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change released their 6th report, and which is giving us a dire concern that there is nothing that is being done to the extent of reducing carbon emissions. We are nowhere to the target that we all had committed as nations. And especially of concern to India, because India is surrounded by ocean on 3 sides, and Himalayas as a concern as the sea level rises, and there are more icebergs that are falling apart, and environment challenges are a big concern. There is got to be a priority to set aside some of the decarbonization strategies. More about that some other time. Global versus local, no winners there. You want to protect local businesses, help thrive them, especially MSMEs. At the same time, you are expecting some foreign direct investments, and you are opening up economy to foreign players for them to invest, especially on greenfield projects. And that war will continue. There are no clear winners as of now. And if we go to the business environment, we clearly have fierce competition. Demand cycle hasn't kicked in. So the competition is extremely fierce for whatever demand that's there in the market. Multinational companies coming with their high-end product portfolios, a lot of financial muscle, financing, brand building capabilities, social media campaigns is influencing and making life difficult for the Indian companies. Product life cycles are fast dying. Me Too products are fast coming in. So, the new product development and innovation is not a matter of choice, but a business imperative. And when you invest in new product development and it has a collapse in life cycle, to recover that kind of investment is a big challenge. So on one hand, it's a paradoxical situation. You can't do without investing in new products. At the same time, the time to recover from the investments that we have put in development is so low that if you attach premium, the copycats from Me Too players are actually pulling you down on the pricing. So that's a paradoxical situation. Customers are becoming very knowledgeable. Their delivery cycles are shortening. They want everything today or yesterday, so to say. And all this putting great stress on the financial performance, which is again a matter of great concern. I mentioned about technology disruptions which are coming from the players which are outside industry. Nobody thought that Internet of Things, e-wallet, e-commerce would sweep absolutely across the industry sectors, which is really the canvas of business is actually undergoing a major change, because the people who are not in the industry are also coming into the industry. For example, who thought that the tech companies like Apple, Google are going to be automotive companies? But that's happening. That seems to be getting to be a reality. A lot of policies and frameworks are evolving. The one that I talked about is about environment. A lot of statutory compliances, environmental regulations are coming into the play, which call for stricter designs. And for just to give you an example, BS6 compliant diesel vehicles would cost a fortune. So many companies decided to do away with diesel. And there are new things like carbon tax and some of the other things are in store, which would mean that the businesses would have to constantly evolve their products, processes, facilities so as to be able to comply with the new regulations.
Ravi sir, just a second. Can you put your presentation on full screen? Actually, the audience wants the presentation in full screen.
It is on full screen, and I think...
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay, cool. I was just talking about, we just spoke about the microeconomic environment, then we little bit touched about the business landscape, how it is evolving, the environment. We were just talking about how acquiring, retaining, and growing customers has become a big challenge for businesses across the segments, across the sectors. And clearly, there is a reckoning that has come that you can't do without partnerships. So partnerships are becoming extremely important, whether at the back end side of the business in terms of technology, supply chain, or outsourced manufacturing, or front end of the business, whether it is franchising, deeper entry and penetration, or building business channels. So this is what the business environment is all about. That actually lays a good background. And I want to, before I dive into customer experience, I just want to state that we have to have a broad-based definition of who is our customer. Normally, the concept of customer is the one who pays for our products and services. In a changing parlance, the companies are fast adopting the internal customer definition, right? And we are now extending it to a concept where every third party you interact with is your customer, because he is either enabling your business, he is either partnering you to deliver your business, or he is actually making a decision or influencing decision. In any case, everyone in the value chain in some way or other is going to have impact on your delivery. So we treat everyone as a customer. So this definition of customer is much broad-based. The one who pays for your product services, of course, is an end customer, which is where you see in red. But the other blue circles are actually enablers, and the light blue circles are actually partners who actually make the whole value chain sacrosanct. So that's the definition of customer. And then we move forward. So the concept of customer experience is the perceptions, collective sigma perception across the value chain over the life cycle. So you have to keep doing it. It's a dynamic process. So right from the time there is an interest all the way to life cycle management of that product, service, project, the customer experience continues to play a big role. We just saw that the business landscape tells us that we have a hyper competitive environment, and therefore acquiring, retaining customers is a big ask. Feature to feature competitors map, price war is there. So in that case, what can be unique is the experience that you can give to your customers, that aha feeling, that unique glue, that secret sauce, which is not easy to replicate because relationships are unique. So I think it's driven on that principle of the customer perceptions across the life cycle. And if we look at management, it is a process of managing those interactions throughout the life cycles. For that you got to understand stated, unstated needs. For that you got to understand customer, get under his skin and know him so well that, like Steve Jobs said, and it's coming on the slide, that even before customer understands what he needs, you should be the one to tell him that this is what he needs. And you have to deliver them personalized service, and you have to deliver them an experience that they will remember. That, okay, I worked with these guys and that's what made all the difference. So I think we are looking at managing a process that has probably a perpetuality element to it. So that's the concept of customer experience. And clearly, we know that to have a great customer experience in place, we got to have in-depth knowledge about the customers, what they do, why they do. And that in-depth knowledge will come only when you map the touch points across the value chain, whether it is at the sales stage, whether it is at the project stage, whether it is at the commissioning stage, or for that matter, life cycle management of the asset that he is owning. So for that purpose, your entire organization, be it at the back end or front end, will have to be customer centric. The processes and systems will have to actually mirror what's going on. And that's what we have to do, while keeping in mind that just as we are doing it, someone else sitting somewhere is also doing the same thing. And that's why we have to be mindful of what competition is doing and continuously raise our bar so that competition will have a catch-up game to do. And that's why the customer experience is not, it's easier said than done. No need to actually expand on customer benefits of customer experience. but it allows you to ring fence your key accounts, which means the customer churn is lower. These are the days of falling customer loyalties. These are the days where the brand is more playing on customers' mind. So how do you create instant recall for your brand is where the name of the game is played. So therefore it will strengthen your brand. And if you retain your murky customers who are going to inspire other customers, that's a great value proposition to have. And that is why superior customer experience is seen to be a winning business strategy, because the account will act as a showcase installation, showcase reference. It will also draw, and it will act as an evangelist or advocate for getting further business. So what we are saying here is, if you develop the relationships which are so strong and actually your business understanding so good that you are moving from just a friend of a customer or just another supplier of a customer to a partner. And this is very, very important transition we are talking. And partnering doesn't come easy. It's a time-tested process that will get you to that status. And for that, you need to develop trust. For that, you need to give him confidence that you're always talking win-win. You're always thinking of mutual gains. And that's where this partnering status can happen. And this is an underlying principle of delivering a superior customer experience. We have to go away from a tactical or a project or a transactional mentality. And we have to move away, and we have to look and talk and think and act as if we are customers' trusted advisors or partners. And this transition is happening from being a conventional player to a customer-focused player to actually becoming a customer-centric player. For many, this is a word play, but for the people who have an eye for it, people who have deeper business understanding, there is a deep-rooted meaning in everything that we say here. Being customer-centric is by no means an easy ask. And this journey is indeed a journey which is achieved over a period of time. And it's constantly evolving because the market is evolving, customer is evolving, he is fine-tuning his strategies. You have to actually piggyback and dovetail your strategies to his strategies. So really, this is a transition more from customer focused to customer centric. And I think some of the explanation on the side gives you a story. But then what do customer centric companies do? They always think of customer. They always think, what is the best thing I can do for the customer? They always try to manage the relationships so well that there is an instant recall about you. They see how my customers win. And let me give you one example. There is a story about, Procter & Gamble sales guy wandering around in Walmart only to figure out what is the buying preference of my customers. Do they look at the right side, left side? Do they have price preference, packaging preference, branding preference? Do they look for deals? What kind of pricing they ask? And accordingly, the Procter & Gamble guy goes back and actually dovetails his product mix, packaging mix, pricing mix, and so on, so that he is able to give Walmart a better service, so that the Walmart is able to sell more to the customers. Just as the Procter & Gamble guy is doing all this, there is this Dow Chemicals guy who is coming and observing what is that Procter & Gamble is trying to do in terms of their new products, in terms of their volumes, in terms of their pricing, alternatives, and so on. And then he in turn goes back and makes those adjustments to his strategic blueprint, so that Procter & Gamble is buy from him more. And just as this Dow Chemical guy does all this, then there is DuPont, who is observing what Dow Chemicals is doing. So what we are talking here is everybody in the value chain is trying to see how his customer can win. His customer can get more business. Then he is able to get the pie, a good share of that pie. So I think the whole idea is how we can help our customer win in the marketplace. And that is real transition to being a customer-centric company. And this is the matrices on which we are talking, that you typically have a product and you're trying to sell a product. That's typically the way companies operate. But then, we have to transition from finding customers who can buy my products to finding products that my customers can buy. It's a big transition. One more time. instead of finding customers for my products, I will try to find products in my own backyard, in my own kitchen, in my own R&D lab, which my customers can buy. So the whole approach is very different. And for that, we have to work on the strategies, we have to work on the people, we have to work on the processes, and we have to have our remuneration and reward matrices to dovetail that. And not to mention, the organization structure will actually mirror the organization that of a customer, so that you know you are actually a step in with him. So these are the transformation themes we are talking when we talk about the customer experience and its concepts. All this sounds great. In reality, what happens? You know, you have to be consistently doing that. And that customer experience has to be consistent across, no matter it is product, project, business unit X, Y, Z. So the experience will be said to be a cutting edge only when there is a consistency. Not an easy thing to do. The market positioning has to be flexible because the customer may change his mix. We all saw that so many people were trying to tap the service of the service part of the value chain instead of trying to focus on the capex. So companies were trying to focus on the opex of customer instead of a capex of customer in the falling demand cycle, because operations and maintenance has to go on for the asset he's owning. And how can I get some portion of the opex budget of customer when he's holding on to his cash because of the business uncertainties and not willing to spend any capex? So I think that is very important. So for that, you need to have flexible positioning. We already spoke about importance of processes. Anything, everything I do in my organization, how it adds value to the customer's functioning there, whether it is my packaging process, will it allow the customer to sell more? Will it attract more eyeballs? Will every feature that I add, every document that I create, will it create value for my customers? That's how the systems and processes will have to be done. Further, the data analytics today is so advanced that we need to have authentic data coming in. And it cannot be fragmented data, it cannot be obsolete data. And then if we don't have capability to analyze that data, then it's a waste. And that's always a big ask. So that's why these big management firms, PwC, Boston, Ernst & Young, Deloitte, and so on, or McKinsey, are trying to devise strategies by analyzing data. Like Mukesh Ambani once said very famously that data is new oil, but what you do with that data is more important than anything else. And that's why imparting superior customer experience despite best intentions is never an easy thing. And if we go further to the challenges part, management has too little time to dedicate to customer experience because they have countless things in hand, and this is one business enabler. It's not direct sales generator, it's not direct sales deliverer. So it cannot dedicate that much time. The processes across the value chain are not very integrated or comprehensive that can ensure the consistency irrespective of business unit, irrespective of what stage of business cycle. CXO priority to the customer experience is little because they're busy to report financial performance for the quarterly earnings. Higher sales, more customer retention, more profitability, execution excellence, operational excellence, procurement excellence, and so on. Which is why the customer experience doesn't get the kind of focus as it should get. And clearly the return on investment from superior customer experience are difficult to establish because it's that fabric that runs across the value chain. It's a slow burn, but it's a consistent burn. Somebody, unless you have analytics going on, that we have piloted this customer experience on key accounts A, B, C, and they are giving this dividend, so we are good to roll out across, are the kind of analytics that need to be done. And clearly, some of the resource crunch always comes in play, whether it is investment on new analytics tools, setting up a dedicated organization to attack customer experience, necessary tools, tackles, funding, independent surveys, and so on. Not always an easy thing to do. So therefore, it is always challenging, irrespective of the fact that it looks so obvious that customer experience has to be the strategy. But these are the challenges and barriers. So moving on, how do you go about doing it? So this is a process that we follow. And in that process, as we said, across the value chain, you keep collecting data. What are the customers' buying preferences? What is the buying pattern? Who has he been doing business with? How stringent are his requirements? What is the decision-making process? How is he organized to make decision? What time he takes? What has been the historical trends? And so on and so forth. And these 4 streams or 5 streams shown there of documents are actually documents and data coming across the value chain. All that data goes to the analytics team. So after the gathering of customer information, that all customer data is put in context, it's integrated. And after that, the data analytic teams gets insights and some kind of analytics throws some clues as to what is that we need to do differently. Because as the saying goes, if you keep doing the same thing, you'll keep getting the same thing. So what is that we need to do differently? It's something which comes out of the analytics. And based on that insights, based on that learning, based on that discovery, we have to devise our strategies, action plan, and then drive all those actions. And then clearly what those actions are resulting into goes in a closed loop circle. So this is how the customer experience process works. Many of these things companies continue to do under different domain, whether it is CSAT surveys, whether it is customer retention surveys, customer health cards, and so on. But nothing is done in a comprehensive umbrella manner. It is often seen as a sales or a front-ending organization thing. So this whole roadmap is very important. And if we get to more specifics, we have to have clear stated objectives and strategies as to what we want to achieve. How will we measure our objectives? What is the target group we are going to go after? Then we have to, clearly decide what kind of efforts have gone is giving what kind of results in terms of our task force approach, piloting. And then you have the clearly data points in terms of satisfaction surveys, account health card assessments, analytics. And based on that, actually do a 360-degree view across the value chain. And then you roll out the strategies across the views, across the organization. And then clearly you have to have strategic interventions. How big companies are doing, how successful companies are doing it. Can we record the testimonials? Can we actually apply for awards? Can we apply for patent excellence? Can we publish success stories, which will continue to influence not only internal stakeholders within the organization, but also in the market? Can we get some testimonials from customers? And can we present it to the forum where we get recognized as leaders, as trendsetters, as path breakers, torch bearers of the industry? Then all that is actually going to translate into a superior customer experience. And then clearly measuring effectiveness in terms of plan, do, check, act cycles, health cards, course correction where it is required, dipsticks across the value chain. What are we doing well? What needs to be improved in terms of traffic light format? Gives a big boost to the overall customer experience implementation roadmap journey. And if you go, again, this is where I think the animation could have played a much bigger role. But if you look at the value chain from pre-sales, sales, post-sales, clearly there are milestones which are stated traveling from interest to inquiry to prospect, bid, finalization, delivery, and so on. And at each stage, you have to decide what are the strategic intervention you need to do. Those interventions will leave a lasting impact, that aha feeling, that welcome feeling, that feeling that of a friend, that feeling that of a well-wisher, partner, advisor. Every touch point across the value chain need to have that kind of impact so that the customer remembers you on the top of his mind. And this is the way we can create a superior customer experience. Whether it is specification writing, whether it is drawing design development, whether it is compliance with government norms, whether it is, filing of statutory reports, whether it is helping him, make a sales pitch to his customers across the process. And then obviously after the delivery, you keep renovation, retrofitting, modernization opportunities. You do periodic health audits. Typically, we are very tactical. We get business, we deliver business. Till the requirement arises, again, the account is not attended. Here in a superior customer experience, you are in sync with customer all the time. And that gives you a unique edge, because sometimes the requirement experience at a operational level, at a plant level, take long time to travel to procurement, engineering, finance, budgeting, CXO in customers organization. However, if you come as a trusted advisor, if you speak about this in different forums at a different cross-functional hierarchy, the point is made very easily. In other words, you are becoming a champion for the operations person in the organization to let his voice be heard at the highest level. That's how you are going to create a superior customer experience. If we go there, there could be a 90-day plan for piloting. And I don't have time to really go line by line, but basically you make sure there is an internal alignment. You need to have a program management office where you have champions who are looking at it all the time. You make sure you have some key customers identified for engagement, because you can't do it for everybody. Clearly, it's an expensive proposition. You keep looking at outside in perspective to see because a customer, because of relationship, may not be free to tell you your shortcomings. It's a cultural thing. So you take outside in perspective to third parties, and then clearly you ready yourself. And this is again an ongoing process. And once you do that, your pilot will be successful, and then you will be ready to roll out across different BUs. So that's the kind of implementation roadmap we are talking. Who are the people who are doing it? You know, there are several companies. There are B2B companies, there are B2C companies, there are companies which are operating in B2G space, government space, and there are some companies which are leveraging tech advantage. And in all of this, there is something to do for us, whether it is hoteling, flying, hospitality, high-tech business, entertainment, retailing, finance. There are all these companies doing this customer experience. They may call it under different name, but all these companies you can relate to, and you can think, yes, I always had a great experience with ICICI Bank because they are so technology savvy. I never had to visit their bank ever. Nobody was ever fired because he bought IBM server. Goes the same. Even today, we don't blink twice before we buying the Tata brand. Amazon tells you at every point in time, at any point in time, 24/7, 365 days a year, what is happening to your order, how it is progressing. There is a return policy, there is a pricing, and so there are so many things everybody is doing. And there is one company, Honeywell, in B2B segment that actually does that also. So I think there are these success stories. So how they do it? They actually walk the talk. They develop the trust. They build their brand. They commit what they do, and they deliver what they committed. So it's a two-way street. Promise you can what you can deliver, and deliver what you promise, as the saying goes. You look back and check the entire process and reinvent where are the redundancies, where are the inefficiencies. So they start from the back. They become disruptors. So they harness the technology much ahead that others can harness. So that they are available 24/7 to you than the others. They invest heavily to upgrade legacy systems and also in the futuristic systems. There is a talk of ESG, environmental, social governance, which is a big thing. ESG company, you got to invest. Then they develop an ecosystem around them. So the people working with them also have that mindset. So that, because you are finally, like we said, you are dependent on your partners, your vendors, your customers, your, subcontractors. So they encompass everybody. So if I am promising a eco-friendly green delivery, even my suppliers and hip suppliers, tier 1, 2, 3, their processes also have to be green, whether it is procurement process, manufacturing process, health safety. So they take care of all this. And clearly they focus on leadership. They focus on collaboration and skill building. This is how they have achieved the leadership position that they are able to achieve. We come to this interesting part about sharing the best practices. What are the best practices to deliver superior customer experience? So you have to translate your 7 P's into what it means to customer, and therefore what it means to the organization. So maybe you have a product, but it's solving customers' problem. So you have to focus on solution. Maybe you think it's a promotion, but customer wants is information. So is your promotion having the thought leadership messaging in it? Is for you to think. For you, it's a pricing strategy. For customer, is it competitive? Is it value for money, bang for the buck? So you say that if you're not competitive, you say that I have the lowest cost of ownership across the life cycle. How easy you make it for customers. Are people competent? Do they inspire confidence when they do sales calls? Do they inspire confidence when they answer technical queries, commercial queries, legal negotiations? Are your planet element, which is an eco-friendly element, fulfilling today's requirements in terms of environmental compliance? The profits that we are talking about, are they complying with ESG standards? Are they ethical? Are you earning profits in an ethical way? Are you deploying your profits in an ethical way? Are you helping the society as a whole, environment as a whole? These are the best practices that make a customer believe that yes, he is able to deliver superior customer experience. So you have to refine your business strategies in terms of 7 Ps. Then clearly I would have liked the animation to come in play here. But what I'm trying to do here is I try to show what are the customer needs of today and what are his needs of tomorrow. So you got to not only map what is he needing today and based on his business anticipate what his needs will be of tomorrow. This I have done for a B2B company. It may be relevant, it may not be relevant for everybody, but generally this is how customer requirements are panning out, because like I saw in the earlier thing, customer is knowledgeable. He keeps asking more and more for less and less. So what are the things that is he asking? So we got to map his asking, which are stated needs, and we got to understand, anticipate his unstated need. We have to convert his requirements into needs. And then someone need to go back and convert those needs into product configuration, specification, because your R&D will actually make a product accordingly. We started by saying that we are going to graduate from finding customers to finding products for customers. So therefore, if you know customers' needs of today and tomorrow, we will be able to be ready to deliver it. There's a big talk of electric vehicles going on. Every single company is chasing electric vehicle strategy. So that's how it is being configured. That's just one example. Industry 4.0, automation, some of these examples are emanating needs of tomorrow. I may not be doing it today, but I have no choice but to do it tomorrow. So I think it is very important to have those needs clearly identified. Then this is an interesting slide too. So what do the best practices do? That they understand what customer values the most. What are our strengths where we are good at? And they focus only on what he needs most and what we are able to deliver most, because that's a sweet spot or a wow feeling. So that circle there, the red patch there shows that customer wants it, you can do it, but your competitor cannot. That's a sweet spot or a niche that you would like to operate. Unfortunately, that niche is never perpetual, because the minute your competition realizes, he is going to catch up and he is going to be able to do the same thing. So you have to move your bar, raise your bar and do even better. So that's how this wow spot is where you want to operate. And obviously, like an iceberg, you have a lot of capabilities. Customer do not know them, or he doesn't appreciate them, or he doesn't think he needs it. So it's your job to unleash the hidden value. And these are the two quadrants where you would like to operate. And the bottom two are completely something which are value eroders. You have to get away. So where to play and how to win is an important part of the customer experience journey. So how do you make all this happen? We talk about customers all the time, but end of the day, it is your employees who are going to engage with your customers. And Vinit Nair of HCL long back tabled a concept, and he had a TED talk also on that employees first. Because only when I have motivated employees, knowledgeable employees, employees who believe in company, its plans, its growth, they will be able to deliver and convey value to our customers. Which means that we need to invest heavily in employees who believe in the strategy, who believe in the game plan, who believe in the blueprint. And then only they will be able to create value for the customers and deliver indeed a superior customer experience. And we all know that if we don't respect our employees, if we don't treat them well, pay them well, help them upgrade their skills, talents, they will actually go and erode the brand value that your company has, because they would come across as substandard. So I think employees and customers are practically two sides of the coin. So we must focus on our employees. Then what are the transformation themes we are talking in terms of best practices? We need to have a pool of brand ambassadors. Typically, companies' face are the CXO level people. But as we know, leadership knows no hierarchy. There could be a leadership at graduate training level. There could be leadership at all levels in the organization. So you need to identify those people and groom them to be your brand ambassadors. You need to enhance your engagement at various forums so as to give the world a feeling that you are leaders in delivering a superior customer experience. You need to give that by way of every touch point, every collateral, whether it is digital collateral, physical collateral, audio visual, flash, VFX, whatever it comes to. You need to invest heavily in business intelligence, market intelligence, analytics. What does it mean to me? What is that I need to change? Which stove I should put on a slow burner? Which pot I should bring up and put in the front burner? Constantly, it is the market intelligence, business intelligence that's going to drive the success. And clearly, you need to go out there and demonstrate that you can do it. And without harnessing technology advancement, it's just not possible to do it. How can we succeed? We need to be patient. We need to bide by time, because the results like customer experience won't come overnight, won't come in a year, 2 years. It's a slow burn, like I said. But the companies who have been able to do that have been able to do that consistently. It's like a back-end process running 24/7. The approach has to be inclusive, because it's not about front-ending, because there is a misnomer that customer means sales, customer means marketing, customer means business development. That's not true. Everybody contributes to making either superior customer experience or inferior customer experience. So we need to have an inclusive approach. Top management engagement is key all the time. Third party dipstick studies, which are going to be eye-opener, very important. We need to tie in our reward remuneration process as a part of performance management to the customer experience. We need to allocate enough budgets. We need to only roll it out to key customers, otherwise it's not viable, because this means that you are going to invest significant time in imparting customer experience, devising processes, refining products, making special documentation, special outreach programs, and so on. So it cannot be done for everybody. This is the best practice that they follow. Why it doesn't work? Because it's not a silver bullet that, you take it, you introduce it, and it doesn't work. So it has to be a long drawn process. The methods often are found wanting. There are no linkages. The organization structure is not easy or nimble to be able to mirror customers. Sometimes we run out of patience too often, that we burn dollars, but nothing is coming out. So we need to change processes, which is a big ask by itself. And who is going to do it? It's not a revenue fetching activity. It's not a cost fetching activity. In fact, it's a cost center. So it's very difficult. After all, it's a cultural change management, which has always been so very difficult. And then, more often than not, we find that organization is taking far too many initiatives at a point in time. So the desired priority cannot be attacked. There is a new product development going on. There is manufacturing expansion going on. There is business excellence audits that are going on. And then there is a, new market that we always want to enter. And then there is new, ESG compliance we need to take, and so on and so forth. So this takes a backseat. And these are the pitfalls which we need to watch for, because only when we pay attention, we will be able to succeed. My last one slide is about, you can take a screenshot. Anyone interested in customer experience, customer centricity can do this for more knowledge. People like you in this forum to share knowledge. I'm grateful to, again, PMA management, especially Mr. Tupe, Mr. Patil, Mr. Pund, Anita ma'am, and also the volunteers, Pranay and team, for giving this opportunity. Thank you. The floor is open.
Thank you so much, sir.
The day everything goes to CFO for budget approval, and then when it comes to signing on the dotted line for the budget resources to do this, there is a question asked about ROI payback. But you have to change before change forces you to change. So goes the saying, right? So, things like business excellence. And my friend Sunil Godbole is here. He practices business excellence a lot. Once it was thought of a fancy thing, today business excellence is seen as very common thing. So some things are evolving, some ideas whose time has to come and some ideas whose time has come. So I think the company that can accelerate by forcing.
And what are the key parameters to track it as well?
Wonderful. Manish, you are a veteran in market survey, market research. What am I to answer you? I'm so happy that you're here. The customer experience metrics can be different for different companies, right? Depending on whether I'm a product company, project company, whether I'm a solutions company, consulting company, right? Whether I have international, domestic customer, what are the criteria? What are the drivers for my sector, segment, company? So depending on all of this, basically you need to understand what would create value for customer. What customer values, what matrices does he look for? Some people look for early delivery. That is the number one criteria. So for them, the customer experience metrics will be heavily weighted towards delivery. Some value technology, so that weighted average matrices will have a heavy on technology, right? Some people value a lot of competency, consulting. So depending on who is your customer, what is his profiling, what segment you're trying to answer, what attributes in the delivery chain he values, you will have to set your CX score. For example, the CX matrice for product business will be different from CX matrice of a project business. As simple as that. For international companies, it could be different than, let's say, Indian company. So it will vary from sector to sector, customer to customer. But generally, we know time, cost, quality, quantity, risk are the overarching themes that dominate. And then there could be subsets of that, Manish. KPI, and that's where I said that tying the CX deliverables to the PMS is very important, because that's where everybody knows that first and foremost, every employee must know that he's contributing to it. That's where we start. And then, tie it into his KRAs, and then, we can talk a lot about it, perhaps.
Thanks, Ravi. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Mani.
To understand, as the audience belong to MSME, where do a MSME person or a person who's working in MSME have is slightly limited?
This, Bimal, thank you for being there. He's a good friend, and I'm grateful that he's here and this question is asked. Again, no shirt fit all, So for MSME, clearly the resources are limited. Everybody appreciates. So again, the answer is going to be the same, that in MSME, in what actually the business line that you are in, who are your customers, what do they value? And that's where you need to focus. And we spoke about it, Bimal, in the past also, that perhaps MSME focus far too much on relationship building. If they focus some time in readying themselves for tomorrow's challenges today. Now, I know budgets don't permit, but then you can develop an ecosystem, for example, with academic institutions. From, there are so many, in Germany, the model is totally dominated by MSME companies who work in tandem with the institutions. So there are several projects, and in India, we do not harness the prowess of academic institutions and their capabilities as much in the business stream. So probably MSME can team up with the academic institution to devise next generation product, to devise product modification, because clearly MSMEs don't invest time into product development because they can't afford. Their focus is squarely on operations, because there is a survival issue, there is a cash flow issue, there is a resource issue, there are people who are, and Anita was talking to me that, sir, you give practical tip, practical. There is no practical, all these are practical tips. What is relevant for you is you need to pick, it's like going to buffet. There is a great variety and food spread. Depending on what your health permit, what your likings are, what appetite you have, you can pick and choose the one that fits your bill. So MSME, depending on what its customer values, what its segment poised to go into, because another thing that MSME don't do as much is market research, which means what is ahead of curve. If we were doing what is ahead of curve, they would be better off preparing themselves. So can they do some analytics to know what is ahead of curve that will de-risk them from any shocks? So customer experience, I think product enhancement, product satisfaction is given. Documentation is another area. Service is third area. The list can be on long list. But again, you will ask what
experience, and customer experience is related to the employees, because employees are anyways going to give the customer experience. But as we also know, there are two types of employees. One is the customer facing employees, one are the inward looking employees. Again, a very interesting question. How can you suggest some customer centric initiative for the inward looking employees, those who are not customer centric or customer facing? Yeah.
Okay, that's a great question. And I started by saying that the concept of customer has changed dramatically. The whole thing is about internal customer relationship. So for inward organization or the delivery organization, as we call it, you got to make them believe which pie of the rainbow belongs to them. So first of all, as a management, we need to draw a rainbow for them. That this is a rainbow as an organization we are creating for our customer, which brings smiles. How they contribute to them making that rainbow is something more often than not understood. So first and foremost, they got to believe that they are the one who are making it happen. I think, was it Flipkart or Amazon? I do not know. But when I received parcel one day, it had a tick saying that, sir, my name is so and so, my mobile number is so and so, and I was delighted to package this to your satisfaction through this environment friendly packaging, and I hope it meets your satisfaction. So someone who was in packaging could actually make a connection with customer. Is he a customer facing? He is not. So the same way, you got to make everybody across the value chain believe that whatever you do contributes to customer satisfaction or dissatisfaction. So the process is just as much important internally as it is externally. So the boundaries of customer facing, non-customer facing are fading, because many times people like, for example, CII or many other, Mr. Godbole is here and he can tell you when they do business excellence audits, actually the auditor comes and wants to engage with people on shop floor, people who are procuring, packaging, to know from them. So if they don't have the appreciation of what they do contributes to satisfaction, dissatisfaction, revenue growth, revenue degeneration, they will never relate to it. So it is management's job to make them believe that they are part of value creation. Once that belief comes in, I think the rest is not so difficult.
Take the last question because the time is already ended.
Okay, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah.
Okay, Kanchan ma'am, you can unmute and ask your last question, and then we'll end the session. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Pranay.
Job description and hierarchies and position, this is evolving canvas, right? So you have to create that. It's again the same thing. It's not quite unstated. It is a stated need that there has to be a dire need for customer acquisition. There is a dire need for customer retention. There is a dire need for customer growth. So the only issue is it is not attributable to a group. So from your point of view, you need to make or you need to sell that belief to the management to be able to make them take action to this effect. But remember, it is like a heavy lifting, because a lone analytics person, a lone designer, a lone architect can't do anything. Ultimately, the whole is a team effort, right? So the success of this role is the definition of success of this role, matrices of this role are very difficult, because nothing of what I spoke in today's presentation is something which any one of us has never unheard of. Everybody knows some of these things, but it's a matter of how you put things together, how you connect the dots, and how you make a fabric which is actually seemingly much better than what individually we were thinking. So I think and then, there are more customer centric organizations where this is an accepted stated practice. So there it's a cakewalk that customer experience professionals are welcome. Where there is not there, but those who are desirous of doing, you can actually go and make them see that need. For that, you need to make some case studies. For that, you need to create some research that, this is what in your sector, this company has done to retain and grow this client. And that is how I can do it for you. I can be a good enabler for you. That story is a hard sell because it's about headcount. It's about combined effort. It's about yet another initiative. So it's never easy. So although I don't want to sound, because, again, I know Anita told me clearly that this is MSME and this is the heavy stuff. Nothing is heavy. All this is coming. How soon it will come and hit you is your comprehension, It's our ability to appreciate, understand whether this is relevant for us or no. So I think this is coming. The earlier you can